The silence of the library. A comfort or a veil. Welcome to Nightmare True Horror. Tonight, we unearth 7 chilling truths from within these hallowed halls, as these stories whisper their secrets. What unsettling echoes do they stir in your memories of hushed aisles and forgotten lore? Share your own library encounters in the comments. The shadows are always eager for new tales, and if you dare to delve deeper with us, ensure you're subscribed. The most disturbing revelations often lie hidden until the final page. Library Horror. The Alderman Library at Sullivan University is a sanctuary of silence, 5 floors of aging books and knowledge, housed in a Gothic revival building that stood for nearly a century. Most students avoid the 4th floor's north wing, the stacks, a labyrinth of towering metal shelves that predates modern library design. The aisles are narrow, the ceilings low, and the fluorescent lights flicker like dying fireflies. But for me, it was perfect. A quiet place where I could spread out my research on abandoned desk carols while working on my thesis. No distractions, no social media notifications, just blissful academic solitude. Until 3 weeks ago, I first noticed it on a Tuesday night. The library was open until 2 a.m. during finals week, and by midnight, I was alone in my usual corner of the stacks. The sound of my pencil scratching against paper was the only noise until footsteps, light ones, almost hesitant, coming from 2 aisles over, then stopping when I stopped writing. I dismissed it as another late-night studier, but when I packed up at 1:30 a.m., I didn't see anyone else on the entire floor. 3 days later, I was back. This time I heard it again. Footsteps that perfectly shadowed mine when I walked to retrieve a reference book. When I stopped suddenly, they continued for exactly 2 more steps before halting. I darted around the corner to catch whoever it was. No one. The unease began to build in my stomach like a physical weight. I casually asked Sandra, the night librarian, if anyone else had been requesting materials from the 4th floor stacks lately. "Just you, Ellie," she said, peering over her reading glasses. "Most students prefer the renovated areas with the charging stations. You're the only one weird enough to hide in those dusty old rows." Her laugh didn't quite dispel my growing anxiety. The following Monday, I chose a different carol, one near the emergency exit. Safer, I thought. I immersed myself in research for hours, the tension gradually easing from my shoulders. At 11:23 p.m., I remember checking my watch. I reached for my backpack to grab a granola bar. That's when I found it. Tucked between my notebooks was a folded piece of paper I didn't recognize. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. It was me. A pencil portrait of my face, drawn with disturbing precision. The small scar above my eyebrow from a childhood accident. The uneven curl of my hair. Even the coffee stain on my collar from that morning. But my eyes, they were filled in completely with heavy, dark graphite. Soulless, watchful. Across the bottom in cramped handwriting. "You look pretty when you concentrate." I nearly knocked over my chair, scrambling to pack up. As I shoved books into my bag, I heard it again. Footsteps, matching my now frantic pace. 1 aisle over. I ran. Sandra looked alarmed as I burst past her desk, but I couldn't stop to explain. In my apartment, doors locked and chair wedged against the knob. I called campus security. They took a report, promised to review security footage, and suggested I study in more populated areas of the library. For a week, I followed their advice, joining the masses at the common tables on the main floor. The anxiety began to fade until I received an email from Professor Harmon about a rare linguistics text I needed. Available only in the stacks. I went during daylight hours, with my roommate Zoe waiting on the main floor. 20 minutes max, I promised her. The stacks felt different in the afternoon light that streamed through the dusty windows. Less threatening. I located the book quickly and turned to leave when something caught my eye. A flash of color in the monochrome row of academic journals. A red notebook, wedged between 2 bound volumes, its corner sticking out just enough to notice. Something told me not to touch it, but curiosity won. I pulled it free. Inside were dozens of drawings. All of me. Me entering the library. Me eating lunch in the campus cafe. Me unlocking the door to my apartment. Me sleeping through my bedroom window. The latest drawing was dated yesterday. My blood turned to ice when I heard it. Those same soft footsteps, no longer one aisle over, but at the end of my row. A shadow stretched across the floor. I dropped the notebook and ran toward the emergency exit. The alarm be damned. The footsteps quickened behind me, heavier now, purposeful. I slammed against the exit bar. It didn't move. Chained shut. I spun around, back pressed against the door. A figure stood at the end of the aisle, partially obscured by shadows. Male, medium height, wearing a familiar Sullivan University maintenance uniform. The emergency exits are checked every month, he said, his voice oddly soft. I'm the one who checks them. I recognized him then. The quiet maintenance worker I'd seen replacing light bulbs and fixing shelving. Always there, always in the background, invisible until now. I've watched you for 87 days, he continued, taking a step forward. You're the only one who appreciates this place like I do. The others come and go, but you stay. My hand fumbled in my pocket for my phone. No signal in the stacks, he said, smiling slightly. The metal shelving blocks it. Why do you think I chose this section? People know I'm here, I managed to say, voice steadier than I felt. My roommate is waiting downstairs. His smile widened. Zoe left 15 minutes ago. I watched her get a call and leave. Probably her boyfriend again. She never waits for you. The realization that he knew Zoe's name hit me like physical blow. He took another step closer, pulling something from his pocket. A pencil, I realized. Just a pencil. I need to finish today's drawing. You look different when you're afraid. Your eyes get wider. I've never been close enough to capture that properly. I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled the fire alarm beside the exit door. The shriek of the alarm shattered the silence. He lunged forward, but I was already moving, ducking under his arm and sprinting down the aisle. I knocked over a cart of books behind me, heard him stumble, curse. I burst into the main corridor and nearly collided with a security guard responding to the alarm. They caught him trying to leave through a service entrance. His name was Edward Mercer, a maintenance worker who'd been employed at 4 different universities over the past decade. In his locker, they found notebooks filled with drawings of other women, other students at other libraries, some of whom had gone missing. I'm at a new university now, across the country. My therapist says the hypervigilance will fade with time, but I still feel eyes on me in quiet spaces. I don't study in libraries anymore. Last week, a package arrived at my new apartment address. Unmarked, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a new drawing of me sitting at my current kitchen table, and across the bottom, those same cramped letters. Distance just gives me a different perspective to work with. The book smelled like mothballs and dread. A History of Appalachian Botany, 1893. Bland title, but the library director had flagged it for me. Rare donation. Process ASAP. My fingers left sweat smudges on the leather cover. Night shifts in the university archives were usually dead. Just me and the hum of fluorescent lights. But this, the first note curled in the margin of page 42, day 17. He thinks I'm cataloging his specimens, but I saw the basement. Neat cursive. I flipped further. Day 23. The jars aren't plants. Day 31. Tried to run. Electric fence. Help. The last entry, dated 3 days ago. Spiderwebbed across a diagram of poison ivy. Hi, noses, I wrote this. He's coming. Hey. Probably a prank, said Marcus, the security guard. He scanned the page under his phone light. Kids sneak in, doodle crap. In a locked special collection. My voice bounced off the vaulted ceilings. And look, I pointed to the shelf mark. Donated by Dr. A. Vickery, 10/15/2023. Marcus paled. Vickery is that botanist who sued the school last year. Got fired for what? Animal cruelty. Human cruelty, I corrected. The lawsuit had mentioned unauthorized clinical trials. Settled quietly. The elevator to special collections stank of formaldehyde. I'd never processed Vickery's donation. It arrived during my medical leave, after the accident. The box it came in sat in the corner, tape slit like a throat. Inside, soil samples, a journal labeled specimen logs, and a dried orchid pressed under glass. The flower's veins resembled a face screaming, Marcus radioed from downstairs. Claire, front desk's getting calls, hang-ups. You good? Static crackled. A whisper cut through. Eden. Lies. Below. Vicary's journal entries were clinical. Subject 12. 34 Wiro male. Limb retention exceeding 72 HRS post-severance with tincture. Photo slipped out. A greenhouse overgrown with vines. Its glass fogged with condensation. Or breath. Google Maps showed the address scribbled inside the cover. 3400 Hollow Creek Road. Abandoned according to Zillow, but the satellite image had a heat signature. Marcus found me in the parking lot. You're really gonna go? What if she's alive? Eden, the Margin's ghost. He tossed me his pepper spray. Text every 10 minutes. The highway bled into gravel. No streetlights. No stars. The greenhouse loomed, its panes cracked but intact. Inside, specimen tables held jars of floating organs. A chainsaw rusted in the corner. And a desk, a ledger lay open. Eden Cooper, research assistant, terminated 10/14/23. Yesterday, a computer hummed. The screen showed live feeds, empty classrooms, the library stacks, and the special collections elevator, where Marcus stood smoking. A new alert popped up. Motion detected, basement. The basement door was padlocked. Through the gap, stairs descending into earth, a handprint on the rail, fresh. My phone buzzed. Marcus, get out. Vicary's here. Headlights slashed through the greenhouse. Tires crunched. I ran. Vicary's voice chased me into the woods. Claire, let's discuss Eden's contributions. Branches tore my skin. I tripped over a root, rolling into a ditch. His flashlight beam grazed my ankle. You're persistent, he called. Like her, a gun cocked. Marcus' cruiser skidded between us. Down! Vicary dropped, howling. The bullet went wide. But the greenhouse burned for hours. They found Eden's body in the basement, and 7 others. Vicary's trial starts next week, but tonight, processing another donation. I found a new book. Margin note, day 1. He's watching you too. And the security monitor glitched. Marcus waved from the elevator, his smile too wide. The Marginalia preys on institutional trust, and the secrets shelved between mundanity. The true horror isn't the monster in the dark. It's the hand that files him under reference. Some stories refuse to stay closed. Keep reading. I smoothed the paper on the counter, my fingers tracing the X. The staff-only door led to a storage closet. Brooms, boxes, a flickering bulb. No room, no space for one. The library was a single-story brick building, wedged between a bakery and a hardware store. I glanced at the door, its chipped paint and dented knob suddenly ominous. My coworker, Meg, a retired teacher who knitted during breaks, noticed my frown. Noticed my frown? What's that? She asked, peering over her glasses. Old floor plan, I said, showing her. This exits for a room that's not there. Her brow furrowed, but she shrugged. Building's been here since the 50s. Plans change. Her voice was casual, but her eyes lingered on the paper. I slipped it into my pocket, the edges crinkling, and went back to shelving. But the X burned in my mind, a puzzle I couldn't shake. That afternoon, I unlocked the staff door to grab cleaning supplies. The closet was cramped, the air stale. I swept my phone's flashlight across the shelves, then stopped. The back wall, cinder block, gray, had a faint outline, like a doorframe sealed shut. My pulse quickened. I tapped it, the sound hollow. Not solid. Something was behind it. I pressed my ear to the wall, and a low hum vibrated through, like distant machinery, or breathing. I backed out, heart thudding, and locked the door. Meg was at the desk, knitting needles clicking. You okay, Ryan? She asked, not looking up. I mumbled something about dust allergies and kept busy, but the hum followed me. A whisper in my skull. That night, closing up alone, I heard a githumping from behind the staff door, sharp and deliberate, like a book hitting the floor. I froze, keys jangling in my hand. The library was empty, the lights dim. Another combo. slower, closer. I checked the closet. Nothing but boxes, the wall silent now. I left, locking the front door, but felt eyes on my back. Heavy and unblinking. The next day, I dug through the library's archives. A dusty room of ledgers and photos. I found a 1953 blueprint. No room behind the closet, just exterior wall. But a newspaper clipping from 1987 caught my eye. Local man, Thomas Reed, missing. Reed, a janitor here, vanished after a shift. His photo showed a gaunt man, mid-40s with deep-set eyes. The article mentioned his obsession with the library's secrets. My stomach twisted. I showed Meg the clipping. She paled, her needles still. I remember him, she whispered, always muttering about a locked room. That evening, I stayed late, telling Meg I'd lock up. Armed with a crowbar from my truck, I pried at the closet's back wall. The cinder block crumbled, revealing a rusted metal door, its handle cold and slick. The hum was louder now, pulsing like a heartbeat. I pushed the door open, and a wave of damp air hit me, smelling of rust and something sour. My flashlight revealed a small room, concrete walls, a single bulb dangling from a frayed wire. In the center was a chair, stained and splintered, with leather straps on the arms. Scratches marred the walls, frantic, like nails had clawed for escape. I stepped inside, my breath shallow. Papers littered the floor, handwritten notes, smudged and frantic. They watch. They know. No way out. My flashlight flickered, and a E-scrape-E echoed behind me, metal on concrete. I spun, beam catching the door as it swung shut. I lunged, but it locked with eye click. The hum stopped, replaced by silence, thick and suffocating. Then a whisper, low, raspy, from the corner. You found it. I swung the light, heart in my throat. Nothing. Just shadows pooling like ink. The bulb flickered, casting jagged shapes. I banged on the door, shouting, but the sound died, swallowed by the walls. The whispers grew, overlapping. A chorus of voices naming me. Ryan. Ryan. I stumbled back, tripping over the chair. My flashlight caught a glint. Carvings on the wall. Names, dates, dozens of them. Thomas Reed, 1987. Clara Hayes, 1992. More, stretching to last year. My name, freshly etched, glistened wetly. The door groaned open, and I scrambled out, crowbar raised. The closet was empty, the library dark, but the front door was ajar, swaying in the breeze. I ran to my truck, pulse roaring, and drove to the police station. Sheriff Boone, a grizzled man who'd known my dad, listened, skeptical. They searched the library, found the room, the chair, the names. But no papers, no whispers, no proof. No proof. Could be vandalism, Boone said. Kids messing around. I knew better. I quit the library, moved to Columbus, but the whispers followed. Last week, a letter arrived. No stamp, no address. Inside was a photo of me, standing in that room, crowbar in hand, my face pale with fear. On the back, in jagged scrawl, we're still here. Someone Reed, or whoever took him, wanted that room hidden. It was a trap, a vault for their secrets, and I'd opened it. Now every creak in my apartment, every flicker of light feels like them, waiting to carve my name deeper. The library's lights are off now, but I see that door in my dreams swinging open. I don't know who's behind it, but they know me, and they're closer than I think. The Blackwood Public Library was my sanctuary and my part-time purgatory. My name's Alex, a poli-sci major with a penchant for dusty tomes, and a desperate need for tuition money. The job mostly involved reshelving and enduring the stern, hawk-like gaze of Mrs. Albright, the head librarian, a woman whose bun seemed to be wound as tight as her personality. My favorite and most dreaded task was the occasional foray into the historical archives, a restricted section in the library's oldest wing, a place that smelled of decaying paper and forgotten secrets. Access was rare. Mrs. Albright kept the ornate brass key on a chain around her neck, like a sacred relic. But one sweltering July afternoon, With a major recataloging project underway, she surprised me. "Alex," she said, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Take these ledgers to the Blackwood Annex. Third aisle, Section G, and don't dawdle, or touch anything else." The weight of the key in my palm felt like a temporary crown. The annex was even more sepulchral than the main archives. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light, filtering through grimy, leaded windows. The air was heavy, still, as I navigated the narrow aisles, flanked by towering shelves groaning under the weight of centuries. I remembered an old library blueprint I'd once seen online. A student project. It had shown an odd, unaccounted-for space behind what should have been a solid wall in this very section. A cartographer's error, I'd assumed. Now, standing in Section G, I ran my hand along the towering, dark oak shelving. It was supposed to be the end of the line, yet the air felt different here. A faint, almost imperceptible draft, smelling not of old paper but of cool, circulated air, and something faintly metallic, like ozone. My fingers brushed against a subtle seam between two massive, unmovable-looking shelf units. Curiosity, that persistent itch, got the better of me. I pushed, with a low hydraulic hiss that was utterly out of place in this ancient tomb. A section of the shelving glided smoothly inward, revealing not a dusty, forgotten storage nook, but a narrow opening into a space bathed in the cool blue-white glow of modern electronics. My jaw went slack. Stepping through, I left the 19th century and entered the 21st. It was a small, windowless room, no bigger than a walk-in closet, but it was crammed with equipment. Slate black monitors lined one wall, their screens displaying a mosaic of live video feeds, high-end audio mixers, recording devices with slowly turning reels, or so it looked. They were digital but mimicked the old style, and complex wiring harnesses filled the rest of the space. The gentle hum of cooling fans was the only sound. But this wasn't storage. This was a command center. My heart hammered against my ribs. The video feeds. They were from inside the library. I recognized the main reading room, students hunched over laptops, oblivious. The children's section, a librarian reading a story. The checkout desk, Mrs. Albright herself, her stern features magnified on one screen. The clarity was astonishing, like watching a high-definition movie. Tiny microphones, disguised as dachshund dimmer or fixtures, must have been everywhere. A girl with bright pink hair, someone I vaguely knew from my sociology class, was flipping through a magazine, occasionally glancing at her phone. The camera zoomed in, so close I could almost read the text messages on her screen. A wave of nausea washed over me. This was a violation on an industrial scale. Then, my blood ran cold. A smaller monitor in the corner, labeled Exterior Approach, restricted, flickered to life. It showed the corridor I had just walked down, the entrance to the annex. Empty. But it was live. They could see who came and went from this supposedly forgotten part of the library. My gaze fell upon a meticulously kept logbook on a small shelf, bound in plain black leather. I opened it with trembling fingers. Dates, times, and cryptic notes. Subject 3B, pink hair, periodicals, recurring pattern of anxiety, increased phone usage. Subject 7A, elderly male, history section, vocalized dissent, Ray, current political climate, monitor for escalation. My stomach churned. These weren't just observations. They were profiles. A new entry, dated that morning. Archive access granted. Student worker A, Alex M. Standard observation protocols. My own name. They knew I was here. Or at least, that I could be. The draft I'd felt. Was it from this room's ventilation? Or had the door been recently opened? Suddenly, a soft chime emanated from one of the audio consoles. A light blinked red next to a label. Annex corridor. Audio active. My breath hitched. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate footsteps, approaching the annex entrance from the main library. They were faint on the monitor's audio feed, but clear. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I looked wildly around the small room. No other exits. The shelving unit was my only way out. I lunged for it, pushing the almost invisible indentation that served as a control. The hydraulic hiss sounded deafening in my own ears as the heavy shelves began to glide shut. Too slow. The footsteps stopped right outside the annex door in the main corridor. I could hear the distinct jingle of keys. Mrs. Albright's keys. My heart leaped into my throat. Was she the one running this? Or was she about to stumble into it, just like me? The shelving unit clicked shut, plunging me back into the dusty gloom of the annex. Just as I heard the main annex door creak open, I pressed myself against the shelves, trying to melt into the shadows, my breath held tight in my chest. Through a tiny crack between the unit and the wall, I saw a sliver of movement. Not Mrs. Albright. A man, tall, dressed in a plain, dark maintenance uniform I didn't recognize, his face obscured by shadow and a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't turn on the annex lights, but moved with familiarity in the dimness, heading straight for the hidden panel. He was going into the surveillance room. I didn't wait to see more. As soon as he disappeared behind the panel, I slipped out of Section G, my sneakers silent on the stone floor, and fled the archives, the weight of those watching screens burning into my back. The ornate brass key felt like a brand in my pocket. The ornate brass key felt like a brand in my pocket. I returned the key to a preoccupied Mrs. Albright, mumbling something about the ledgers. Her eyes, magnified by her thick glasses, seemed to bore into me for a moment. Did she know? Was her stern demeanor a front for something far more sinister? Or was she just another oblivious patron, watched by unseen eyes? The official explanation, when an anonymous tip, not from me, I was too terrified, eventually led to a quiet internal investigation, was decommissioned security system testing. The alcove was sealed, the equipment supposedly removed. But I knew that was a lie. The hum of those machines, the cold glow of those screens, the intimacy of those stolen moments, they were too real, too operational. The library is no longer my sanctuary. Every quiet rustle of pages, every hushed conversation, every security camera, and I see them everywhere now. Feels like a part of that hidden room. I changed my major. I avoid the Blackwood wing, because some secrets, once uncovered, don't just haunt the archives. They follow you out into the light, a constant chilling reminder that someone, somewhere, might always be watching. Working at the library was supposed to be calming, a peaceful escape from my chaotic life as a grad student. I volunteered there twice a week, cataloging books and handling donations. It was mundane, routine, comforting, until the day the donation arrived. The box was unmarked, left anonymously at the back entrance, nestled between stacks of donated romance novels and outdated textbooks. A musty odor drifted from it, sharp and sour. I carried it inside, curiosity prickling at the edge of my mind. In the dim fluorescent light of the processing room, I opened the box carefully. Inside lay a single object wrapped in yellowed newspaper, an antique Bible, ornate and worn. I lifted it, noting its unusual weight. My fingers tingled nervously. I opened the cover. It felt oddly stiff. The pages were missing, carefully hollowed out, and my heart froze as I saw what lay inside. A collection of human teeth, dozens of them, yellowed and cracked, rested like grotesque jewels in the hollow cavity. Beside them lay a lock of hair tied neatly with a faded ribbon. My stomach twisted violently, nausea rising quickly. Dropping the Bible on the table, I backed away, hands trembling. Who would leave this here? And why? Panic surged through me, the silence suddenly oppressive, every creak of the old building sounding threatening. I called the police. They arrived swiftly, their presence filling the quiet library with a buzz of anxiety and whispered speculation. Officers bagged the evidence, promising investigation, but their grim faces told me they knew something darker was involved. "This isn't random," Detective Lewis told me, his eyes piercing beneath heavy brows. "Someone wanted this found, wanted attention." Sleep eluded me that night. Visions haunted me. The teeth arranged neatly, the hair bound delicately. Every sound outside my apartment startled me awake, heart racing. Paranoia crept into my routine. The next day, another anonymous package appeared, smaller this time. Inside was a simple note typed on aged paper. "Thank you for taking care of her." Fear consumed me. I began researching obsessively, digging through local history, searching for anything related. Days blurred into nights, each moment shadowed by the knowledge that someone was watching, waiting. I stumbled onto an unsolved disappearance from 20 years earlier. A young librarian, Rebecca Morris, vanished without a trace from our very library. My blood ran cold as I read. Rebecca had distinctive long blonde hair. Her smile remembered as radiant. The knocking started that evening. Soft, deliberate taps against my apartment door, always late. Always when I was alone. Peering through the peephole revealed nothing but emptiness, the hallway stretching ominously empty. Then came the phone calls, silence on the other end, broken only by faint breathing. Police brushed it off as harassment, promising patrols that never seemed to reassure me. Finally, desperation drove me to the archives beneath the library, where decades of forgotten records hid in shadows. Dust and mold thickened the air, choking me as I sifted through boxes labeled in faded ink. My breath caught as I uncovered a yellowed photograph of library staff from 20 years ago. Rebecca Morris smiled brightly, unaware of the danger looming just beyond the camera. Beside her stood a familiar face, younger but unmistakable. Detective Lewis. My pulse raced. The man investigating the strange donation was connected to the missing librarian. But how? Finding what you're looking for. I spun, heart leaping into my throat. Detective Lewis stood in the dim doorway, expression unreadable. You knew her, I whispered hoarsely. Rebecca Morris. He stepped closer, eyes darkening. She wouldn't stop asking questions, digging around. Like you killed her, I accused, voice shaking. No, he said softly, stepping closer still. I loved her, but she found out too much. She was going to ruin everything. I had no choice. My legs shook. I backed away slowly, searching for an escape route. Those teeth, he continued calmly, eyes glazed with memories. A reminder, Harris, and others who got too close. You're clever, though. Perhaps too clever. He lunged suddenly. I ducked, knocking over stacks of files, papers scattered in chaos. He tripped, sprawling to the floor, cursing furiously. I fled blindly, racing up the stairs into the light. Bursting into the library lobby, I screamed for help, startling patrons and staff. Within moments, police arrived, weapons drawn. Detective Lewis was arrested that night, exposed as a serial predator who had hidden behind his badge for decades. Rebecca Morris had finally found justice. But the library never felt safe again. I quit volunteering, the silence no longer comforting but filled with whispered secrets. And every night, alone in bed, I hear that soft, deliberate knocking echoing endlessly in my mind. My name is Clara, and for 3 years, the Oakhaven County Library was my quiet corner of the world. I'm a history student, and the job, reshelving, processing returns, and the occasional culling of ancient forgotten books, was usually a peaceful counterpoint to academic stress. Oakhaven is a sleepy town. Not much ever happened, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday, late October. The air outside crisp with the promise of an early frost. I was in the deep stacks, assigned to clear out a cart of books deemed too damaged or obscure for circulation. Most were crumbling to dust, their pages yellowed and brittle. Then I picked up a slim, unassuming volume, Forgotten Trails of Oakhaven County. Its cover was faded, the spine cracked, standard discard fodder. But as I flipped it open, a faint coppery scent hit my nostrils. The margins of several pages were filled with spidery handwritten notes, penned in a dark reddish-brown ink that made the hairs on my arms stand up. It looked chillingly like dried blood. The script was agitated, almost frantic in places. Phrases leaped out. He watches from the old mill. Don't trust the seventh son. The circle must be closed before the first snow. A shiver traced its way down my spine. This wasn't just idle doodling. I took the book to my terminal. The system showed Forgotten Trails had been checked out 18 times over the past decade. Each time, under a different name. Silas Blackwood, Eliza Thorne, Jonah Fell. Names that sounded like they'd been plucked from the very folklore the book described. No real addresses, just P.O. boxes or vague, non-existent rural routes. No one had ever reported the disturbing annotations. The next few days, the book became an obsession. I'd sneak it from the discard pile during my breaks, poring over the bloody script. The notes seemed to hint at a hidden history of Oakhaven, a darker layer beneath its placid surface. Some pages were heavily marked. Others had only a single cryptic symbol. I noticed a pattern. The checkouts often coincided with local anniversaries, the founding of the town, the date of an old church fire, the solstices. It felt less like random reading and more like a ritual. A creeping unease started to follow me through the usually comforting silence of the library. The rustle of turning pages in an empty aisle would make me jump. I'd catch fleeting shadows in my peripheral vision, as in my imagination, fueled by the book's grim contents. Or was the book itself a beacon, drawing something unseen? One particularly disturbing scrawl mentioned the Weeping Willow by Miller's Creek, a notoriously isolated spot just outside town. A place local kids whispered was haunted. The folklore book itself described an old, unsubstantiated tale of a woman who'd vanished there centuries ago. The bloody note next to that passage read, "She still waits for an offering." I tried talking to Mr. Abernathy, the head librarian, a kindly, stoic man who'd worked there for 40 years. When I showed him the book, his usually ruddy face paled. He traced one of the bloody notes with a trembling finger. "There are stories, Clara," he said, his voice low. "Things best left undisturbed. This town has deep roots." He advised me to put the book back on the discard pile, to forget about it, but his eyes held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Fear, or perhaps a grim understanding. I couldn't let it go. That night, I took the book home. Under a stronger light, I noticed something new. On the inside back cover, almost invisible, was a list of the aliases used to check out the book, written in the same bloody ink. Beside the last one, Orion Vance, was a tiny, almost imperceptible pencil mark. It circled the name, and next to it, a date. November 1st, All Saints' Day, only 2 days away. And below that, a fresh, faint pencil notation. "The collection is incomplete. The path requires a new guide." My heart hammered. This wasn't old. This was active. November 1st. I told myself I was being foolish, paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was supposed to happen. Mr. Abernathy had called in sick, a rare occurrence. After the library closed, a strange compulsion, a terrifying curiosity drew me back. I still had my staff key. The library was cavernous and silent, the emergency lights casting long, eerie shadows. I went to the local history section, where forgotten trails should have been. I waited, hidden in the darkness of an adjacent aisle, my breath catching in my throat. An hour passed. Then, the soft click of the front door. Footsteps, quiet, measured, moving with unnerving confidence through the darkened library. A figure emerged into the dim light of the history section. Not a grotesque monster, but a woman. Someone I recognized, a quiet patron, mid-30s, plain, always with a stack of research books. She never stood out. Tonight, her eyes, usually downcast, were wide, luminous, and unsettlingly focused. She went straight to the empty space on the shelf where forgotten trails belonged. Her shoulders slumped when she found it missing. A soft, frustrated sigh escaped her lips. Then she began to search, her movements becoming more agitated. Then, she began to search, her movements becoming more agitated. "Looking for this." My voice was a shaky whisper. I stepped out, holding the book. She froze, her eyes locked onto the book, then onto me. There was no malice in her gaze, but an intense, almost desperate hunger. "You have it," she breathed. "What? You weren't supposed to. It's not your turn. What game is this?" I asked, my hand trembling. "It's not a game," she said, her voice low and urgent. "It's a path, a duty. The notes, they guide us. They guide us. Each reader adds their mark, their understanding, their sacrifice. It keeps Oakhaven balanced." She gestured vaguely. "The aliases, the dates, they're part of the ritual. The book chooses its next custodian. The blood, offerings," she whispered, "to the old ways, to what lies beneath." She took a step closer. "Orion Vance. He failed. He broke the chain. The path is fractured. Someone needs to mend it. The book came to you. It chose you, Clara." The implication was horrifying. She wasn't a villain in the traditional sense. She was a zealot, ensnared by a dark tradition perpetuated by this cursed object. The true crime wasn't a single act, but this ongoing ritualistic cycle, hidden in plain sight. I backed away, shaking my head. No, this is wrong. Her eyes hardened. The book doesn't care about wrong. It cares about continuation. She lunged. I screamed, dropping the book, and scrambled back. The sound echoed through the silent library. Suddenly, the main lights flickered on. Mr. Abernathy stood at the end of the aisle, his face grim, a phone pressed to his ear. He hadn't been sick. He'd been waiting. The woman was apprehended, rambling about broken circles and restless spirits. The book, Forgotten Trails of Oakhaven County, became evidence, then vanished into some police archive. Mr. Abernathy never spoke of it again, but his eyes held a new weariness. Oakhaven seems peaceful on the surface, but I know what secrets its quiet library held, what dark currents flow beneath the mundane. I left that job, left Oakhaven, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I can still smell that faint, coppery scent of old blood and decaying paper. And I wonder, who has the book now? What new names are being added to its grim ledger? Because some stories, once read, never truly end. They just wait for the next reader to turn the page. I never planned to stay in Millfield. After 15 years in Chicago's publishing industry, losing my editing job to corporate restructuring felt like both a betrayal and an opportunity. My severance package offered 6 months of breathing room, enough time to finish the novel I'd been neglecting for years. So when my Aunt Martha passed away and left me her house in rural Pennsylvania, the timing seemed perfect. A quiet place to write, minimal expenses, and a chance to regroup. Millfield barely qualified as a town. One main street, a diner that closed at 8 p.m., and a population that had been steadily declining since the lumber mill shut down in the 90s. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers earned sideways glances at the grocery store. 2 months in, with my novel stalled at chapter 3, cabin fever was setting in hard. My daily routine had devolved into staring at blank pages, taking aimless walks, and too much cheap wine. When I saw the flyer seeking volunteers at the local library, I applied more out of desperation than civic duty. Head librarian Elaine Mercer, a stern woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and reading glasses that hung from a beaded chain, seemed surprised that the city woman wanted to volunteer. "It's nothing glamorous," she warned, leading me through the cramped building that smelled of old paper and furniture polish. "We're digitizing our newspaper archives. The Millfield Gazette has been in print since 1893, and we've got most issues. Historical Society gave us a grant for preservation. The basement archive room was a windowless space lined with metal shelves containing bound volumes of yellowing newspapers, and cardboard boxes stuffed with loose clippings. A single computer workstation sat in the corner, looking oddly modern against the analog surroundings. Just scan each page at 600 dpi, save by date, and enter basic metadata," Elaine explained. "Start with the most recent and work backward. The older ones are more fragile." The work was tedious but soothing. 3 afternoons a week, I'd descend into that quiet basement and methodically transform physical history into digital files. I found myself oddly invested in Millfield's past. The opening of the community pool in 1967, heated debates about installing the town's first traffic light, the annual Fall Harvest Festival that once drew visitors from 3 counties. I'd been volunteering for almost a month when I first noticed it. A small missing persons ad in the classified section of a 1997 issue. Missing, Daniel Grayson, 19. Last seen April 12, walking on Old Mill Road. Dark hair, green eyes, 5'11", wearing blue jacket, jeans. Any information, please call 717-553-194. There was nothing particularly unusual about the ad itself. What caught my attention was a similar notice 3 pages later for a different person. Jessica Miller, 24, with the same contact number. Coincidence, I thought. Perhaps a police department number or community hotline. But as I continued through that month's editions, 4 more missing persons ads appeared. Different names, different descriptions, same phone number. All young adults, all last seen alone. Curious, I checked the following month's issues. 3 more missing persons, same number. None of the ads ran for more than 2 weeks. That evening I mentioned it to Elaine as I was leaving. "Oh, those years," she sighed. her expression darkening. Terrible time for the town. Kids kept disappearing. Police never found anything. No bodies, no evidence of foul play. Most folks assumed they were runaways. Mill had closed. Economy was tanking. Not much reason for young people to stay. All of them runaways? That seems unlikely. Elaine shrugged. People see what they want to see. Town council didn't exactly encourage digging deeper. Bad for the little tourism we had. What about the phone number in the ads? Her brow furrowed. What number? All the missing persons ads used the same contact number. That's odd. She seemed genuinely puzzled. Should have been the sheriff's office number. Maybe a special task force line. My curiosity was piqued. The next day, I started from 1995 and worked forward systematically. The pattern was clear. Beginning in June 1995, missing persons ads appeared regularly, approximately 2 per month, all using the same phone number. The disappearances continued until November 1998, then abruptly stopped. 39 people total, ranging from 17 to 26 years old. None of the local news articles mentioned connections between the cases or raised alarms about the frequency. Each disappearance was treated as an isolated incident, usually attributed to possible runaway status. After my shift, I drove to the county records office and requested missing persons reports from that period. The clerk, a balding man with coffee-stained teeth, seemed amused by my interest. "Working on a book?" he asked. "Just curious," I replied. "I'm digitizing old newspapers for the library. Waste of time looking for connections," he said. Sheriff Denton investigated back then. Different circumstances for each one. Family troubles, money problems, relationship drama. Kids that age disappear all the time. His dismissive attitude only strengthened my determination. I left with photocopies of the reports, more questions than answers, and a growing sense that Millfield had collectively agreed to look the other way. That night, I spread the reports across my kitchen table, arranging them chronologically. The official narrative was disjointed, each case closed with vague conclusions. No evidence of foul play. Likely voluntary departure. Insufficient leads to pursue. On impulse, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the number from the ads. 717-553-104. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. "Hello?" A man answered, his voice unexpectedly warm and clear, without a hint of sleep despite the late hour. I froze, unprepared for an actual answer. I had expected a disconnected line or an automated message. "Hello? Is someone there?" the voice prompted. I hung up, heart pounding. The phone rang 30 seconds later, my number calling back. I let it go to voicemail. No message was left. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering who had answered that phone. A number that should have been disconnected decades ago. The next morning, bleary-eyed from insomnia, I returned to the library. Instead of continuing with my assigned years, I pulled the bound volume for 1998, 1999. Focusing on the period when the disappearances stopped, November 1998 held nothing unusual until I reached the Thanksgiving edition. A small article caught my eye. Local photographer Deason home fire Edward Nichols, 42, perished when fire engulfed his residence on Lakewood Drive early Tuesday morning. Nichols, who operated a portrait studio on Main Street for over a decade, was known for his work photographing high school seniors and community events. Fire Chief Wilson reported the blaze likely started from electrical issues in the basement. Nichols has no surviving family. Something about the timing nagged at me. The last missing person ad had run exactly 1 week before this fire. I checked the business listings and found an advertisement for Nichols' photography studio, capturing memories that last forever. When Elaine came to check on my progress, I asked about him casually. "Ed Nichols?" "Sure. I remember him," she said, adjusting her glasses. Quiet man, kept to himself. Good photographer, though. Did all the yearbook photos for years. Did he have family here? Not that I recall. He moved to town in the early 90s, bought that old Victorian on Lakewood. Shame about the fire. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Why the interest in Ed? I shrugged. Just noticed his obituary while scanning. Seemed young to die. After she left, I checked the newspaper's staff box. Edward Nichols was listed as photography contributor from 1994 through 1998. His position would have given him access to classified ad submissions. That evening, I drove to the address mentioned in the article. The lot stood empty, a flat, grass-covered foundation, surrounded by overgrown lilac bushes. No new structure had been built in the 2 decades since the fire. As I stood staring at the empty space, an elderly man emerged from the neighboring house, eyeing me suspiciously. "Something I can help you with," he called. I approached his fence. "I'm researching local history." This was Edward Nichols' house, right? His expression softened slightly. "Sure was. Terrible business, that fire." "Did you know him well?" "Neighborly enough. Waved hello, shoveled my walk once when my back went out." He squinted at me. "Why the interest in Ed after all these years?" "I'm looking into some missing persons cases from that time," I admitted. The old man's demeanor changed instantly. "You better move along," he said, turning back toward his house. "Wait, please. Did you ever notice anything unusual? Visitors at odd hours? Strange sounds?" He paused at his door. "Lady, this town buried those questions a long time ago. Some things are best left alone." The door closed firmly behind him. Frustrated but undeterred, I spent the next week diving deeper. County property records showed Nichols purchased the house in 1994, shortly before the disappearances began. Employment history: photography instructor at a community college 2 counties over until 1993. Then self-employed. No criminal record, no living relatives. I kept returning to that phone number. Who had answered, and why did they call back? Against better judgment, I dialed it again, this time from a library phone. After 3 rings, "Hello?" The same warm voice. "Hi, I'm calling about a missing persons ad," I said, heart racing. A long pause. "Which one?" The question sent ice through my veins. "Daniel Grayson, 1997. Another pause. "Are you family?" "No. I'm researching disappearances in Millfield during the 90s. "Ah." His tone shifted slightly. "What's your name?" I hung up, suddenly aware I might have made a serious mistake. That night, someone knocked on my front door at 11:23 p.m. 3 sharp raps, then silence. Through the peephole, empty porch, darkness beyond. I double-checked all locks before retreating to my bedroom, phone in hand. The next morning, I found a manila envelope on my front step. Inside was a single photograph. A young man smiling awkwardly at the camera, wearing a blue jacket. Paper clipped to it was a short newspaper clipping. Daniel Grayson's missing persons notice. My hands trembled as I turned the photo over. On the back, written in faded ink, "First session complete. Subject shows excellent potential." I called in sick to the library and drove straight to the police station. Officer Mills, young, earnest, new to town, listened patiently as I explained my discoveries. His expression grew increasingly uncomfortable. "Miss Bennett, I understand your concern, but these cases were before my time. Sheriff Craven might remember, but he's on medical leave. 39 people disappeared in 3 years, all with the same contact number in their missing ads. The disappearances stopped when a local photographer died. Now someone's watching me and leaving photos on my doorstep. You don't see a problem here." Mills sighed. "Let me run the number, see if it's still in service." 10 minutes later, he returned, looking perplexed. "Number doesn't exist in any current database. Are you sure you copied it correctly?" "It's still working. I called it yesterday." He gave me a look that bordered on pity. "Look, I'll request the old case files and ask around. Maybe check on this Nichols character. In the meantime, lock your doors. Consider a security camera." I left frustrated but not surprised. The town's collective amnesia regarding these cases seemed deliberate rather than coincidental. That afternoon, I went to the library despite my illness. I needed access to those archives without supervision. Waiting until Elaine was busy with a patron, I slipped downstairs and began searching through the 1994 editions. Before the disappearances started, what I found changed everything. Beginning in March 1994, small ads appeared in the classifieds. Photography subjects wanted, portraits for upcoming exhibition, compensation provided. Call Ed, 7 and 17, 553, 194. The ads ran consistently until June 1995, exactly when the disappearances began. I dug deeper, locating several community news items, mentioning Nidal's planned exhibition titled Capturing Essence. One included a small photo of Nichols himself, thin-faced, intense eyes behind round glasses, a camera hanging from his neck. Something about his expression made my skin crawl. The way he looked at the camera, not at it, but through it, as if seeing something beyond the lens. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear Elaine's approach until she spoke directly behind me. "I thought you were sick today." I jumped, paper scattering. "Sorry." I felt better and thought I'd make up the hours. Her eyes fell to the articles spread before me. Edward Nichols again, not a question. The timing of his death coincides with... Stop. Her voice was sharp. "This isn't why we brought you on. Don't you think it's strange? All those missing young people, all connected to the same phone number, a number that's somehow still active?" Elaine's face hardened. "Some histories aren't meant to be digitized, Miss Bennett." That night, alone in my aunt's house, I compiled everything I'd discovered. The pattern was clear. Nichols advertised for photography subjects. When volunteers stopped coming, young people started disappearing. Each had been alone, each roughly the same age range, each vanishing without witnesses. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "You have one new message," the automated voice announced. I pressed play. "Subject shows potential," the warm voice said, "but requires further sessions to capture true essence." The message ended with the sound of a camera shutter clicking. I called Officer Mills immediately. No answer. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house sent my heart racing. Around 3 a.m., headlights swept across my bedroom wall as a car slowed in front of the house, then continued on. At dawn, I packed a bag, determined to leave Millfield behind. As I loaded my car, I noticed something on the front porch. A small digital camera. Not mine. Against all better judgment, I turned it on and checked the stored images. The first showed my house from across the street. The second, me at my kitchen window. The third, me sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom. The last image made my blood freeze. It showed me standing on the porch, looking down at a camera. This camera, from a perspective that could only have been taken seconds ago from the street. I looked up. Across the road stood a thin man with round glasses, a camera raised to his eye. The shutter clicked. I'm writing this from a motel 3 states away. I've contacted the FBI with everything I've discovered, but I'm not optimistic. Millfield protects its secrets well. Sometimes my phone rings. Always unknown numbers now. I never answer. But the worst part, I've checked my photos from that final morning. In the background of one, partially hidden by trees at the edge of my property, stands an indistinct figure watching my house. When zoomed in, the image is too blurry to make out details, except for the camera hanging from his neck. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the faint sound of a shutter clicking in the dark corners of my room. The last page has turned, but the disquiet lingers, doesn't it? 7 unsettling truths now imprinted. Which librarian secret, which echoing footstep, will follow you into the quiet hours? We invite you to discuss your deepest fears, your theories, in the comments below. Your insights illuminate the darkness for us all. If these tales have resonated with that part of you that seeks the thrill of the genuinely unsettling, consider subscribing to Nightmare True Horror, and show your support by liking this video to help others find our hidden corridors. Until the next volume of terror is opened, prepare for more true horror.